Spurs don't have any pressure to win. I will give you
I disagree
a
with that.
little bit.
I disagree
They don't
with
have
that.
pressure to win right now.
Well, listen, if we're talking about a championship, you're right. They don't have a pressure to win a championship. They have a pressure to make the playoffs. They have a pressure to make a massive leap this year. Victor Wembanyama is getting that third-year itch, right? Like that's a real thing that's coming about. This dude is focused on winning. And I think people within the organization, this is not a report, this is a thought. I think people within the organization are starting to recognize that we've got to do things to lay the foundation that we're doing everything to not kick the can down the road, that we are serious about winning. Yes, we can bring in young players. Yes, we could develop. But at the same time, we got to focus on the bigger picture. And the Spurs better make the playoffs this year. And I would think that they would even want to be a team that's outside of that play-in realm, right? They want to be a top 6 team.
Okay, look.
And I don't know if that's realistic, but Victor Wembanyama wants that.
Of course, everybody wants that, Jared. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing we got to be careful about. Remember, everybody was looking at Oklahoma City a short 3 years ago and saying, what's happening there? You guys have 2 losing seasons in a row. Are you going through the process? And then all it took was 1 year to get into the play-in, 1 year in the second round, and then you're in the NBA Finals. They had 2 losing seasons there in the post.
Massive difference. Massive difference. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander today was not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander back in those back-to-back years when they won 46 total games. Okay? Victor Wembanyama is today what we think he's going to be. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, but
Victor Wembanyama has the chance to run away for the next 10 years with Defensive Player of the Year and compete each one of those years for MVP.
Right.
You've got to make sure you're committed and doing everything possible to surrounding him with the best possible cast of characters that he can lead to the playoffs year in and year out. We can talk about championships later, right? This doesn't have to be a black and white league that everybody tries to make it out to be, where it's either championship or top pick in the draft. There is a middle ground, and the Spurs have to be there. They've got to get themselves out of this lottery conversation to appease Victor Wembanyama.
Now, Jared, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Are you ready? And I'm not going to treat you like a hostile witness, but I'm going to ask you 2 questions because during our last podcast, you treated me and my audience like hostile witnesses. So I'm going to start here.
Was there any waterboarding? Because I don't remember this.
No waterboarding.
Okay.
How many games did Big Vic play last year?
Like 40-something.
46 games, right?
Yeah.
So he's got to make sure. Now that was, blood clot, weird stuff. I'm not saying that he didn't get himself right.
He was on pace. He was on pace to play over 70 games.
Right. But you're saying there's the urgency there. We got to make sure that he can stay on the floor. Like you have to make sure that everything's being done so that he's available. I'm not even saying that's on him. I'm saying that's organizationally. I think they were going to be fine. Secondarily, didn't they make a big trade last year?
Yeah, of course.
They traded for De'Aaron Fox last year, so it's not like they were kicking the can down the road. They saw an opportunity. They saw a disgruntled De'Aaron Fox who had a trade request, and they made a move to go get him. Now, we didn't get a chance to see it all come into fruition because of the injury, but they've been trying. You got the Rookie of the Year, Steph Castle. They had Chris Paul last year. What are they going to do with Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan? Yes, those are questions, but those aren't nobodies. I think they came into the number 2 pick. They weren't out here stumbling. They're not the Charlotte Hornets. I think just because they got the 2nd pick by virtue of a lottery, not by virtue of having the 2nd worst record in the league, gives lacrosse the wrong impression. Am I right?
100%. I'm not trying to be a revisionist of history here. What I'm trying to do is look forward with this and simply say that Victor Wembanyama is good enough to be the best player on a playoff team year in and year out. And he's going to grow tired of not being in the postseason if this team continues to fail. And all I questioned simply was, should they have entertained the idea? Should they have taken a more serious look at acquiring a veteran, somebody who could come in and guarantee them that they can contribute to a playoff push this year and next year, as opposed to Dylan Harper, who may have a higher ceiling than said veteran, but it may be 3 or 4 years before you see the fruits of that labor.
I'm not necessarily saying I'm against you. I will say this: in the 46 games he played last year, the Spurs were 21-25. Now, that's nothing to write home about. That's not Western Conference playing territory, but they were competitive with Victor Wembanyama. And you look at the years of maturity that you're going to do and natural roster construction that's going to change. I don't think that in today's second apron NBA, and you are the small market San Antonio Spurs, that you trade a cost-controlled number 2 pick for a proven veteran. If you want to get a proven veteran, you can go trade the Sohans, the Keldon Johnsons, one of those guys, and maybe package him with something that you got. You don't give up the number 2 pick. That is far too valuable. And I'll give you another reason why. Another piece of evidence, excuse me. The Brooklyn Nets, who had 5 first-round draft picks, were looking to get to the number 2 draft pick from everything that I was told leading up into it, but the Spurs wouldn't budge. Now, are you telling me that you would rather have you wouldn't have Dylan Harper, but you would go down and say, I'll take 8 and 22 or something like that?
No. I wouldn't have done that. I would have.
Good.
And I know we're going to talk Boston later, but the level of deal I'm talking about here is, some sort of package of the number 2 pick and those young guys, that you're talking about.
For Jaylen Brown?
For Jaylen Brown. Saying? Yeah. And I'm not saying Boston would do that. I'm saying that's the level of deal that I'd be thinking of. Right.
Got you.
Yeah, I'm not taking the things that help the Nets become one of the worst teams in basketball back for me. I'm talking about a guy that you can plug into that starting lineup today at the 3 spot, at the 4 spot, depending 4 or 5, depending where you want to play Vic, and help you get to be at the very least a mid-tier Western. Would you agree with this statement? It is a failure if the Spurs don't make the playoffs this year.
Failure in the Western Conference? This is a disappointment. It would be a disappointment. I think you can have the expectation.
Dude, we're talking about the dude who's going to walk into this season as the odds-on favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year, and be, I would imagine, I'm not a gambling expert, but I would imagine he's going to be in the top 5 mix for MVP, preseason.
As he should. Yes.
Right. You got that guy that's going to be in contention for 2 of the biggest awards in the NBA heading into the season, and you don't think it's a failure if they miss the playoffs?
Now, you just said you don't want this to be this very binary black and white thing. And yet, when I said it would be a disappointment,
that's semantics. You're making it semantics now.
No.
Because you're a wordsmith. You think you're a fancy writer that puts together all these big-time words and, colloquials and all these things that make us people feel like we're dumber because you're smart. I'm not a smart man, but I know this, that if the Spurs don't make the playoffs in Victor Wembanyama's 3rd year, it will be a disappointment, a failure, whatever word you want to use.